Welcome to this tour of Sizergh Castle. Sizergh has been with the Strickland family since 1239 and continues to be their family home. The Stricklands have a long and fascinating history, and much of it is told through the rooms and objects in Sizergh Castle. The house has changed through the centuries, all in different periods, and is a reflection of the ups and downs of the family. In the late 1300s, the oldest part of the existing house was built. The solar tower and a single-storey hall was built at the same time. This was originally the medieval Great Hall, a communal focus for the whole household. The room was changed to roughly what we see today during the Tudor expansion and became a below-stairs area. The great doors and parquet floor were added in the late 1890s by Sir Gerald Strickland for carriages and later for cars. Now we'll go up the stairs to the upper hall. These used to be outside and led up to the main entrance. On the way we can have a quick look at the table made of scagliola, plaster coloured and polished to look like marble. Sir Gerald, 1st Baron Strickland of Sizergh, was a Maltese politician who rose to be Prime Minister of Malta before World War II. He also served as MP of Lancaster at the same time. Sir Gerald had 2 wives. Firstly, Edelyn, with whom he had 8 children, but only 5 daughters survived past infancy. His second wife, Margaret Halton, brought large sums of money to Sizergh, and she had the limestone rock garden and mirror pond installed. Here we have Thomas Strickland's earliest portrait from 1600, painted on wooden panels. Thomas was the son of Walter, who did the Grand Tudor expansion. Thomas gambled and drank much of his inheritance, but he also shaped the family future by marrying a Catholic who brought up their 7 children as Catholics. This is Mrs. Strickland, our late donor tenant. She had 6 children and numerous grandchildren. Opposite is her husband, Lieutenant Commander Thomas Strickland, Sir Gerald's grandson. Thomas and his parents donated Sizergh to the National Trust in 1950. We'll now go through these thick walls and into the tower. Originally, this dining room was one large room, the main living area. It was divided during the Tudor expansion for more privacy and comfort and used for formal entertaining. The entire house was clad with this typically Tudor panelling and the overmantels. These Flemish and Italian designs hadn't been seen before in England and were installed by Sir Walter to show off his heraldry. On this overmantel we see the Strickland motto Sans Mal, without evil. Sir Thomas and his wife, Winifred Trentham, were close friends of James II and Queen Mary, and after the Glorious Revolution of 1688, they followed the Stuart court into exile in Paris Saint-Germain, France. Whilst in exile, the Stricklands held various posts, becoming central to court life. These portraits were given to Winifred by Queen Mary, either as a thank you for the family's support and loyalty, or for safekeeping. While in exile, Sizergh was put in trust with 2 Protestant servants, Thomas Shepherd and Robert Crane. It was held in trust until 1699, therefore Sizergh wasn't confiscated by William III like other Catholic estates were. The Strickland family still make use of this room at Christmas and other special occasions, and it accommodates up to 30 family members. This overmantel gives the room its name, the Queen's Room. It was designed to show loyalty to Queen Elizabeth I, despite the fact the Stricklands are a Catholic family. You can see here, Vivat Regina, long live the Queen. These portraits are by Dom Jerome Hesketh, a Catholic priest who travelled around the north of England in the mid-17th century, using his artistic practice as cover for his vocation. We now think that the portrait, labelled as Jane Strickland, is actually Walter. Young boys were kept in dresses until they were 6 to 8 years old. They would then be considered adults and would be put in breeches from then on, hence the term breeching. This room was originally panelled like the rest of the house and was possibly hung with tapestries. Cecilia Townley, who married Charles Strickland in 1762, heavily altered the room to its current state as a drawing room. She wanted a light, open Georgian palace rather than a dark Tudor hall, so the windows were enlarged and the fireplace was replaced with another door onto the terrace. When Charles died, Cecilia married his cousin Gerard, so from her children there was a senior line from Charles and a junior line from Gerard. Sizergh stayed with the senior line but passed to the junior when Sir Gerald purchased it from his cousin in 1896. The Stricklands were early patrons of Gillows of Lancaster, who had a reputation for quality nationally. They were also important early patrons of George Romney, a local artist. He began his career in Kendal before becoming one of the great society portraitists. The banqueting hall was originally the sleeping area for the whole family in the medieval era. Men of all ages and ranks would sleep on this floor, with women on the floor above. The ceiling would have been where the gallery is now. Here we see some very important Tudor furniture with carved initials and dates. These benches are rare survivors and are of national importance. Walter Charles Strickland altered this room from the Victorian style, making it more medieval. He also changed the name from Sizergh Hall to Sizergh Castle. Walter Charles suffered from financial difficulties, made worse by the agricultural depression, and so he was forced to sell land, property, and even many family treasures, including the portraits of the Stuart kings and the contents of the next room. The inlaid chamber was the last room to be completed, sometime between 1575 and the mid-1580s, and it took between 7 and 10 years to complete. It was always thought that the work was done by 2 Flemish master craftsmen and their apprentice. However, new evidence has shown that it may in fact have been done by more local craftsmen using Flemish design books. This style of panelling has never been seen in England before, and it was designed as a showroom reserved for the most revered of guests, possibly built with the intention of luring the Queen's representative in the north to Sizergh. It was sold to the Victoria and Albert Museum, then known as the South Kensington Museum, in the 1890s by Walter Charles to fund his alterations. The panelling and ceiling were sold for £1,000, however the ceiling could not be removed, so a cast was made. Later, the bed and Tudor stained glass were sold for £400. When Sir Gerald purchased the property, shortly after this he tried to buy this room back from the V&A but was unsuccessful. The room finally came back in its entirety on long-term loan in 1997 and legal ownership was transferred to the National Trust in 2017. Touchingly, the names of the original joiners were found behind the panelling when it was reinstalled. A short tour of Sizergh Castle can only begin to scratch the surface of the family's 800-year history here. For more information, please visit nationaltrust.org.uk/Sizergh.